So as I stated before, this has basically always been our family's sort of grand finale movie before Christmas. We
Hmm.
watch all the Christmas themed movies leading up to, and we end with this one on Christmas Eve at the very end of the day. And that seems to be like this kind of seemed like just another Christmas movie in our childhoods, but it seems like as it's gone on, this movie has become such like it's a lot of people's like ultimate Christmas movie.
I feel like a lot of people put it right up there with like a Christmas Story and stuff like that.
The amazing thing about this, where this has been building for a long time, but it really hit me this year because I still haven't seen this in a theater, but they've started playing it. Like they have a series, like every December as of the past few years at our local theater. And there is they started with Gremlins and they did the Polar Express and Elf and all that, and then Christmas Vacation is always the last one they do on the last Saturday before Christmas,
Hmm.
and it's each movie has one theater with one showing at 1 o'clock on a Saturday of December.
How have you never made it to this?
I can tell you,
Okay.
this almost immediately sold out, and so they gave it a second theater. A second theater also playing it at 1 o'clock, and as soon as they posted that second theater, it sold out immediately too.
Jesus.
It was insane, and I think the
This would be a fun movie to watch in a full theater.
I would love to have been there, but it sold out so fast,
Shit.
and I think it did last year too.
Hmm.
And I think that in itself shows like the real, not just the lasting power this has, but the continuing power that this has.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easily, because you talk about it being like, one of the best Christmas movies ever and all that. I think enough, because I was trying to figure out exactly what makes it stand out from the other Christmas movies, that it really, really took off to this degree. I think it helps that if you take the Christmas genre out of it completely,
Mm-hmm.
there are many people that will just flat out, in any genre, consider it one of the funniest movies ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Not just Christmas movies, but like of all the comedies
Mm-hmm.
in the world, one of the funniest ever made.
And it's funny too because a lot of people consider the first Vacation movie to be really good, but almost unanimously they'll say this one's better.
Yeah, that's something that's kind of gone on over time too. Where I remember it was for a while there, it was the first movie that was considered like one of the greatest comedies ever, and made like actual like lists of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it feels like you barely hear about it compared to this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's insane.
And it's become commercialized because now it has like T-shirts and
I'm wearing one.
Christmas sweaters. Yeah. Like Susan showed me earlier, Chris Jericho posted a picture on his Instagram of wearing a Christmas sweater that said "Shitter's full." It's everywhere.
There are 4 ornaments on the tree in there
Mm-hmm.
that are related to this.
Fernie had on a "Shitter's full."
Yeah, yeah. One of Randy Quaid doing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, I think the most interesting thing about this movie is that it is, despite the fact that it's the third movie in a quadrilogy, it is so standalone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really feels like it does not feel like it's part of a franchise.
Especially with one where the crux of the franchise is a travel comedy.
It's
And, like,
Vacation's still in the
highway
title.
hijinks. Yeah. And this one, they stay home.
Yeah. And I think that's almost kind of ballsy to call it Christmas Vacation and be about the Griswold family, and they don't go anywhere.
Yeah, but you could also make the argument that it's for the kids' Christmas vacation or Clark's work vacation.
I was going to say
Christmas.
Clark's work vacation, but that's like 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of shit goes down in that 3 day. A lot of shit goes down throughout the whole thing. It really
Christmas
picks up
Eve.
once he gets off work.
Christmas Eve itself is the entire last third.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's still stuff in there that kind of carries over, like...
I think there's so much shit that goes down on Christmas Eve that I think the final battle in Avengers Endgame is over before Christmas Eve is. Like,
Because
there's just as much carnage.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there is stuff that does carry over, like Clark's absolute need for perfection
Mm-hmm.
is here just as much as it is in the other vacation movies. And
Mm-hmm.
then, much like the first movie, this one ends with an inadvertent kidnapping that gets a SWAT team after them.
Yeah, it's like when Ellen says, oh, I'm sorry, this is my family's first kidnapping. No, it fucking isn't. No,
John Candy says hello.
This has been your third. In the first one, you were the perpetrator. In the second one, you were a victim, and now you're perpetrating again. And in the fourth one, Wayne Newton tries it.
And it's so funny, of all people, it's like Ellen's in denial or something. 'Cause
Yeah.
she's the one that's always involved in it.
Yeah.
And she's the one that said that.
Yeah.
I also think it kind of sets up a different tone with, one of the things that immediately stands out that people recognize immediately is the animated opening.
Mm-hmm.
Is great in itself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that doesn't always work with movies, and it kind of seems weird, and why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like one of the most memorable parts of the movie, and one of the most famous parts of it, the theme song and the animation itself.
Yeah, and the fact that, the movie chose to use a different theme song when it already had a Holiday Road.
Yeah. And it's, and I like how the whole thing is about, like, Santa's misadventures, when this is a movie that doesn't even go into the Santa thing.
Yeah.
It's not like Christmas with the Cranks or anything like that. Austin Pendleton's not going to show up in some. But, yeah, and just the way that it's pretty much taken this entire pop culture stance. Every single time you drive down the road when it's nearing Christmas and somebody has a lot of lights on their house, that is now synonymous with the name Griswold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like every time you see somebody with lights all over their damn house, like the people 2 houses up, somebody will mention the Griswold name as they drive by that house.
Did I ever tell you I was in Susan and I last year went to Pittsburgh to look at Christmas lights, and we drove by a house in the neighborhood that had the exact same lights, and in the front yard had a mannequin dressed like his boss in the same pajamas wrapped in a dog chain.
I think I do
standing
remember
outside
that.
the house.
Yeah, and then there was the other one where that guy ended up making news because he had a dummy of Clark hanging off the gutter, and a guy thought it was a guy in distress, and he called the cops. Did you see that story?
No, I didn't.
Oh yeah, yeah. They went all out and had like a Clark dummy hanging from the gutter. And that's just the thing too, is it's like just about every scene in this movie, you could like make something like that out of. Like you can recreate the scene where they kidnap Brian Domer, you can recreate the scene where Clark's hanging off the gutter. There was a time that just blew my mind. It was my science teacher in 8th grade, which was also your science teacher in 8th grade. And how unexpected, like, you know the dude, so you can imagine how unexpected it was when this guy is, like, really, I don't know how to describe him.
Eccentric.
Yeah, yeah, perfectly. Just a really, really sort of eccentric dude, and you're never quite sure, like, how to approach him. And we were talking about friction in science class, and just out of nowhere, he referenced the sled scene as an example. I swear to God. And it was like, this dude loves Christmas Vacation, apparently. And I use the word love because there is no way he would just whip that out as an example when we're talking about friction. And it's one of those, I don't know that I've ever met a person that's like, I don't care for it or I don't find it funny. Like, everybody considers it a classic, at least that I know or I've interacted with. And it's one of those cases where it just makes you want to, like, you watch the movie and you know why, because it's one of the funniest movies ever made. But it also really makes you want to dissect exactly what it is that makes it have that appeal. And I think a lot of it is, like, how it finds the comedy in almost everything. How there is, because obviously it's written by John Hughes, who we've talked about a few times now in this Christmas theme, where John Hughes has a way of going, like, super over-the-top slapstick, but also having, like, a really sincere heart at it, which doesn't always balance out. But this movie especially has a way of, like, for every sincere moment, there's a joke to back it up. And both hit. One doesn't outweigh the other, which I think is great. And there's even moments that would just be, like, the boring parts of other movies, like when Clark and Ellen are in bed discussing the dread of having their families come at the same time and the arguments that are going to ensue. And throughout this entire conversation is the sap stuck to his fingers while he's trying to read a magazine thing. And it's like in any other movie that would just be a normal dialogue scene. And it's ingenious that they just added that. And it's a carryover from another scene.
Yeah, and it's not like there's no, other than the pages ripping, there's no attention drawn to it.
Yeah, they never talk about it. It's just happening to them. Yeah. Even when he's turning off the lamp and like dragging Ellen's hair and all this, they're not even mentioning it. He looks slightly inconvenienced, and that's it. She just keeps talking like nothing's happening. She's so used to this bullshit. And I think that's something in itself. Like, that one scene in itself says so much about, I think, the appeal of this movie, just as one example. Mm-hmm. But there's so many.
There's a lot of recognizable stuff that you see from, like, that you can relate to, too. Like, the grandparents sleeping through the parade being on TV.
Yeah.
Like, Russ, like, watching It's a Wonderful Life, but it looks like he's not really paying attention to it. He's just kind of staring at it.
I like how they even take the grandparents sleeping thing and they bring it forward for a more over-the-top scene. Like, it's one thing they're sleeping through the parade, but then we get Uncle Lewis sleeping through the whole squirrel thing going on. But it almost feels like a callback to the whole just old people sleeping, that's what they do thing.
Mm-hmm. And like the conversations that they have right when they get to the house.
Yeah. There's like, it's the character of Aunt Bethany especially, who's played by the actress that voiced Betty Boop. Mm-hmm. Is like every single line that she says has not only been endlessly quoted, but is comedy gold. Because I always get this warm feeling. When we talked about the whole last third of the movie is Christmas Eve, mm-hmm. I always get this warm feeling that the movie is obviously brilliant all the way up to this point, but it really takes off the second we hear the line, "Is your house on fire, Clark?" and this is going to be what the rest of the movie is. It's like I always anticipate that line because I know it's the start of just the movie's true greatness as it goes into this last act. And just that whole thing is so perfect. But there's also the physical comedy works also. Like, I had heard that Chevy Chase was really adamant about having like almost Chaplin-style comedy in it, like, throughout the entire attic scene. Where I think he was saying in a recent interview where that whole thing, when he's stepping on the boards that keep coming back up, is a bit he had always wanted to put in a movie somewhere. And he found like an opening in this attic scene. He was like, "We're doing the board thing." and I love how the hits keep on coming when he goes to the window. And it hits him in the head, and it's like, he just can't catch a break.
Even when he pulls his head back in, he slightly bumps it before he closes it.
And that's before he crashes through onto the bed.
I also love, too, that it's kind of a Looney Tunes style comedy, too. Because Clark never shows any damage for what he's gone through. He's always fine in the next scene.
It amazes me. There is no damage when he eats the ladder when he opens it.
There's no damage there. There's no damage when he hits the big metal box at Walmart. Nothing from the gutter when he falls in the bush. Like, not even a scratch on his face from the bush.
It is like he's a cartoon character.
Yeah.
Like, I was hearing, I think he said something about it, like, when he was shooting it in real life, when he punches the Santa before he throws it, he like broke his finger on it, but you can't even tell. And then, but the thing about the attic scene also is what I was talking about with that balance of the heart and sincerity with the comedy, where it's like we get the board scene, and it's like right out of a silent movie. But then he finds the home movies, and there's something genuine there. You had brought something up that I hadn't even thought about just now when we were watching it, when you said that were Uncle Lewis and Aunt Bethany originally supposed to be there, or did he invite them out of nostalgia after he watched the home movies?
Yeah.
And then he actually like sheds a tear, and it actually is like a real moment. But the thing is I don't think if people have seen the movie enough, they probably don't even recognize it as a real emotional moment anymore, because we're all anticipating the moment where Ellen opens it and he just drops out of it.
No damage from that
to either of them.
Yeah.
It's like I almost fear more for her in that scenario.
It's almost like the Griswolds themselves are the cartoon characters, because Uncle Lewis shows damage. Like his toupee comes off in the first 5 seconds he's at the house. It's such a simple joke, but I think it's the reaction of everyone that makes it funny.
And the way he tries to, like, nonchalantly put it back on without anybody knowing.
And I'm pretty sure it's on backwards when he does it.
And it's so obvious because it doesn't match his real hair color. And then there is, what else is there? There's an interesting...
Like, another part of, like, the realness of it, too, is his relationship with E.G. Marshall's character as his father-in-law.
Yeah.
Like, nothing he does is ever good enough.
Yeah.
Like, even when the lights do work, he's like, yeah, they're not twinkling.
Yeah.
But then you have, like, the nice come-around at the end where, like, after he's gone on his rant to Brian Doyle-Murray, like, E.G. Marshall's the first person to stand up and have his back.
Yeah. Yeah, because throughout the whole movie, Clark's family is, like, always got his back. When, like,
yeah.
They're the ones that are, like, super encouraging about the lights and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that was a sweet moment with Audrey. When she tells him that it looks nice, even though they aren't lit up.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, you've got Doris Roberts and E.G. Marshall making their comments saying it's a waste of money, and so do washing machines. And then, yeah, when it all kind of...
I'm convinced that Ellen's father is just Upson Pratt.
It's a prequel.
Yeah.
Because they're like, what, 7 years apart, but he looks exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to mention real quick, because before that, I was also going to say another comedic scene that we almost didn't have has always been very interesting to me. The fried pussycat. When the cat gets electrocuted and just vaporizes itself. We almost didn't have that scene. Apparently, I think it was the producers wanted to take it out. Because I don't know if they thought it was too over the top or they didn't think it was funny or what.
Mm-hmm.
But then they showed the movie to test audiences, and the test audiences thought that was the funniest scene in the movie. And so that's how close we were to not even having that scene.
Oh, God. I wonder what would have happened to the cat then. Because something would have had to happen to the cat. I bet the cat would have been involved, like, I bet the cat would have chased the squirrel and the dog would have chased the cat.
Yeah. Poor Julia Louis-Dreyfus always did.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that...
Somebody else that suffers damage while the Griswolds don't.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too, is it's like, I think another funny thing about seeing them constantly tortured is not just because it's clear the kind of people that they are, but obviously this was like right around the same time Seinfeld was starting, and it's like Todd, I believe his name is even though she's not necessarily completely
Why is the
playing...
carpet all wet, Todd?
She's not completely entirely playing an Elaine-type character, but Todd is definitely the kind of guy Elaine would date.
And they kind of stick out, too. Like, you think they'd be, like... You think they would be in the city, like... Yeah. In, like, a high-rise penthouse apartment, not in the fucking suburbs next to the Griswolds.
It's almost like it's a vacation house for them or something, even though it's just in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to point out...
And I love the precedent that when we first see them, and Margot says, I hope he falls and breaks his neck. There's the precedent already set when Todd says, I'm sure he'll fall.
It's not even, like, it's not even, when you think about it, it's not even, the punchline isn't even, but we're not lucky enough to have him break his neck. It's, I'm sure he'll fall. It's like, how long have they lived there and witnessed other shit?
Yeah. What have Todd and Margot seen?
And it's clear the way they interact at first when he like says, "Hey, Griswold," and then he makes the comment about shoving the tree up Julia Louis-Dreyfus' ass, and it's like, how many times have they interacted? It seems to be there's a certain sort of comfort and discomfort here that this has happened many times.
I think that's the last time that they actually interact with them until Shitter's Full.
Which is barely an interaction.
Yeah.
I love that you consider that an interaction.
Well, I mean, there's a greeting and an explanation of what's going on. That's an interaction. And the response is just run away.
To retreat. I did want to point out real quick, because we got to get more into Randy Quaid. But before we do, I do think Beverly D'Angelo is an unsung hero of this movie. Just her expressions. I mean, we talked about stuff like the way she just keeps talking when he's like the saps in her hair and everything. But some of her reactions, like when she sees that they're about to go into the truck, and then when they are, is gold. in itself. She just has to react. But then there's stuff like when the lights have come on and everybody's happy. I love that moment when like Clark is hugging his mom and she's like awkwardly stuck between them. There's the moment where they're eating the turkey and they're all kind of like chewing it and she's pretending to eat it, and there's that quick shot where you see her flick it off her fork before she puts her fork in her mouth. I love the moment when he realizes that the thing in the mail is not his bonus, and he's doing like the hey ho thing, and he kind of trails off the hay, and she finishes the ho because she's still excited is what it might be. And I think there's just so many things that are perfect about their relationship that the movie doesn't. The
one thing that really throws her off guard is when he drops the Danny fucking K line. That's the only thing that like she reacts like she can't believe it happened.
It's like she knows the movie's only PG-13.
Yeah. It's like she's like, oh, there's our F-bomb.
It's like in the tirade in the first Vacation, she's used to it, but it's like she recognizes the PG-13 F-bomb. And it is interesting that the F-bomb is in that scene, considering this has one of the most famous tirades in movie history, and it's not in that scene.
Let's just talk about the fact, too, that this is considered so superior to the original, and it's a lesser rating.
Yeah. And it shows you how you can get to that point without it being, like, raunchy.
Yeah.
Because the first one gets... I don't know how many people remember, when you go back, the first one can get really raunchy. Even the sequel, which is also only PG-13, can also.
The most raunchy this gets is, like, his scene with the store clerk and then his fantasy about her swimming in his pool.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's it. Which
starts off as his, like... I love watching throughout this movie his resentment of Eddie. This is the most passive-aggressive we see Clark, like, ever. Like, we get that vibe also when he's with Eddie in the first movie. But, I mean, this one, like, his passive-aggressiveness is at an all-time high. And I think it's because Eddie's on his turf. Because there's the moments, like, I know Dad's favorite line in the movie, our Dad's favorite line in the movie is, if I woke up tomorrow morning with my head sewn to the carpet, I wouldn't be more surprised than I am now. The whole scene when he's walking through the house and he says, can I get you anything? And he goes through a list and then ends with, drive you out in the middle of nowhere and leave you for dead. The biggest laugh I get in that scene is, what is that, like a windmill? And he just destroys... I love it that it's not like just a couple of pieces fall off. He just does this and the whole thing comes apart. It's Eddie to a T that happens. Don't forget the sledding scene too, where Eddie's going into this explanation about his plate and Clark's just like, do you really think it matters? What was it? She turns on the microwave and he pisses his pants and forgets who he is for half an hour. I also love that my hair just ain't gonna look great. He's another one where, like, every single thing he says is gold. It's amazing that Eddie and Aunt Bethany are in the same movie. And every scene she's in, Eddie's in. And both characters, every single line they say is gold. Usually, you're lucky to have one character like that in a comedy, and this one has so many. You could throw in Uncle Lewis in there. William Hickey is comedy gold in this also, and it feels like he's barely trying. He's just so angry. One of my favorite lines has always been, "You couldn't hear a dump truck driving through a nitroglycerin plant." And I also like his agitation with Bethany when he's like, they want you to say grace, and she's just like, the blessing! Like, he's getting ready to kill her. And then it occurs to her, like, oh, that's what it means. But I'm like, what did she think he meant when she didn't want to do it? My guess is he's like, they want you to say your dead friend's name, and she's like, no, I won't. Because Bethany's the kind of person that she's not going to draw attention to her dead friend. Yeah. And then, also talking about... we didn't even mention one of my favorite Eddie lines. Just his absolute total obliviousness. Whether it be crushing the light bulbs at Walmart, which is amazing. Like, I love that they just disappear under the dog food entirely. The fact there's so much dog food. Yeah. But, and usually you get, like, one brand. Yeah. But it's like everyone that's there. And this conversation is happening with Clark trying to help him give his kids a nice Christmas, and he has, like,
$60 worth of dog food in the cart.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too where it's a perfect balance because that follows up one of the more core moments of the movie as far as where the emotion is, and it's like the way Hughes is acknowledging like how poor people sometimes just can't do Christmas, like they just can't, and there's something really sincere in there, but it's the fact that we're able to laugh with it because we know Eddie as a character, and the way it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, I don't know, here's a list alphabetical. Which perfectly matches Eddie's character from the first movie when it was when he's like, you know, do you think you could spare some cash? And Clark's like, sure, how much? And it's like a really large number, and Clark just puts his money back in his wallet. So it's like, yeah, so it's like, I love how consistent the characters are.
And we find out that they're so poor because Eddie has been holding out for a management job.
That's another good moment with Beverly D'Angelo, just that look on her face when she says that. Yeah. But yeah, also, what we were talking about, how it feels like such a standalone movie, but I still love the consistency of the characters when you look at the first movie.
Except for Audrey and Russ, which is par for the course.
Yeah. Like that was just a running joke after a while, wasn't it?
This is the only one, I think, where Audrey's older.
Yeah. And I do think there's a lot of people... I do think there's a... Actually, I think they all work to an extent. There's not a Rusty and Audrey that I think that I dislike, but I would say Johnny Galecki and Juliette Lewis are the best, wouldn't you say?
They are. I remember when I was staying at a hotel for work, and European Vacation was on, and I forgot how much of a tool Russ is in that one.
Yeah, Jason.
But it works.
Yeah, Jason Lively, but he is really good in it also.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, what is it? He's like Blake Lively's much older half-brother in real life.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is weird.
And then of course Ethan Embry is a great Rusty also, and that Dana Hill, Marisol Nichols, and then Anthony Michael Hall and Dana Barron are obviously great in the original movie. But I think Johnny Galecki and Juliette Lewis especially just really nailed it, especially their relationship with each other.
Yeah.
But that's really strong between Anthony Michael Hall and Dana Barron also. But I mean here it just really comes through.
Yeah, and I think European Vacation didn't come through as much because Audrey and Russ had such different goals throughout that movie.
Yeah.
Like, Audrey was obsessing over Jack, and Russ was just wanting to get laid.
Yeah.
So, like, there wasn't really a reason for them to feed off each other like the first one and this one.
I think my favorite moment involving the two of them in European is, are you happy, Dad? She's dead. Is there anything that we didn't... Oh, yeah, another running joke that I like throughout the entire movie is watching, as each thing goes wrong throughout the movie, the garbage pile at the front of the house gets higher.
I've never noticed that.
Yeah, because it starts off with, like, what is it, the Santa and the reindeer that he beats up, and then it's, like, the sled, and then it's the chair. I think there's more things there, and they just keep piling up. Yeah.
Because you see the tree when Eddie pulls back in.
Yeah, and then all this stuff, and then that's, like... When you talk about the moments that are very sincere, and then there's a comedic payoff instead of the other way around. The most sincere moment in the movie when it's like, you know, they all gather around, and it's a genuinely heartwarming moment when we see the whole family together and everything's coming together. Brian Doyle Murray says that he's going to give him a massive bonus now. And then the final payoff is Uncle Lewis blowing up again. And not only is that funny because of how over the top it is, and it puts the whole movie in perspective, because that garbage pile that's been piling and piling for the movie for every bad thing that happens just goes up in flames and it all goes everywhere. But not only that, it's a joke they've been building up the whole movie. There are so many references to that sewer for that payoff. And it's about the best payoff we could have asked for. So,
we even see Uncle Lewis throw the match down in slow-mo, if I remember right.
And I don't even think he cares.
There's a lot of fun...
It's almost like he knew that was gonna happen.
There's a lot of fun camera shots like that in this, too. Like when his dad yells squirrel, the zoom in on him, like, it's really dramatic. The point of view cam of the squirrel when Clark's digging through the tree.
Yeah, so I think that's about all I was going to say, I think. Do you have anything else?
Not really.
So yeah, it's one of those things where you can actually look into it. Like obviously you can just stand back and say it's one of the funniest movies ever made, and that's the appeal of it. That's why it's at the legendary status it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really look into it, you can find like the real individual reasons why, and that was a relief to me because I actually wasn't sure going into this. I was afraid we were gonna kind of I don't know what we were gonna be doing, but yeah. So I think that's gonna be what this is.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing to do now is have Christmas come in the morning, and then once that passes, get back to business as usual until it happens again, and all of these movies get revisited all over again, and the fun can begin, re-begin. So I mentioned before Uncut Gems and Little Women, and maybe a couple other things being reviewed. Golden Globes predictions on Friday, and Oscar nomination predictions probably shortly after that, and so on. So, do you have anything else to add?
I started the Kathy Bates train.
I mentioned it. I gave you credit, and I'm going with it. So, yeah. So until all that, I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.